Hello, everyone, and welcome to the WonderFlow office hours. My name is Katya. I'm head of marketing at WonderFlow, and thank you for joining us today. We're going to wait a couple of minutes before officially starting, but while we wait for people to join, I'd like to kind of talk a little bit about what the office hours format is. We always get lots of questions from customers, prospects, or partners about different specific topics. And so once we have all of them, we really wanted to answer them to everybody and not just to each person individually. So each one of our office hour sessions is centered around a specific topic or subject. And then we try to get a lot of questions from you guys. And so thank you a lot for those who submitted the questions. We really appreciate them. I think it gives us a lot of opportunity to understand what people care about and gives us an opportunity to then pick questions and answer to the most relevant questions during these sessions. Um, Today's session is about analyzing social media data. Today, in today's office hours, we're going to kind of tackle the fact that most brands are listening to social media, but almost none of them are actually hearing what matters for their products. We're going to show you how to treat unstructured social data with the exact same rigor, consistency, and scalability as traditional ratings and reviews. Again, while we're waiting, and just something for all of us to do, I'm going to start a quick poll so that we can kind of understand what you guys care about, what struggles you have with social media data. So we're going to launch a quick poll, and then after we answer the poll, we're going to start the official session. But this is just a quick poll. You should now see it. So the question is, what is your biggest headache with social data? And there's a couple of questions, a couple of options. So feels free to select and to let us know what's your biggest struggle and what your issues are when it comes to social media data. And while we're all completing the poll, a couple of housekeeping items that I'd like to address. We got some questions beforehand, so we're going to be during the session. We're going to prioritize those questions and we're going to answer them first. But definitely, if you have a question, put it into your Q&A section at the bottom of the webinar and put your questions whenever you have them. We'll try to leave some time at the end to answer those questions. And even if you have questions after the session, feel free to email us or reach out to us. We'll definitely answer them and cover them in an email or in another format. So those are kind of all the housekeeping items. And the last thing, we are recording the session. So all the registrants and attendees of this webinar will receive a recording. All right. So I think that's it for our housekeeping items, for introductions, for, just kind of some first words. I'm very excited about this session, and I'm really excited to introduce you to Elisabetta, WonderFlow's solutions consultant. She's going to be the one, she's answering your questions. She's the real expert here, and it's a really great opportunity to learn from her directly during this session. So, Elisabetta, I'm passing the mic to you.
Thank you, Katya. So thank you, everybody, and hello, and thank you for joining. Let's get into the matter. So we are currently living in the most hyper-connected consumer market in history yet. Paradoxically, it has never been harder for brands to see the truth about their products. Probably, if you're joining this session, you know this roller coaster, a new product launches, social mentions spike, engagement climbs. Maybe your share of voice dashboard looks amazing. Leadership is asking if this is working, and the data says yes. But then, when reviews start to be collected 3-4 weeks later, maybe, star ratings drop. Returns tick, or structural flaws to your products emerge. So what looked like a massive market hit from the share of voice dashboard, now suddenly can become a severe customer experience nightmare. And the reason behind it often is that the tracking tools you were using measured visibility, but not product satisfaction. And when teams make product, marketing, or even inventory decisions based primarily on this social momentum, they're betting that visibility will then become satisfaction, which is often not really the case. What these teams need instead is to surface granular customer insights through a structured and large scale analysis of what buyers really think of the product. Are they satisfied or not? So, I want to be clear, social listening tools are not lying to you maliciously. They're actually doing the jobs they were built for. Social listening tools track mentions, brand buzz, marketing reach metrics, and help brands understand what's being said about them across the different platforms. But there is a critical distinction to be made, and it is that these tools are designed to measure conversation, not feedback. And conversation and consumer feedback are really not the same thing. Conversation is what people say even before they open the packaging. So even before they've tried the product, tasted it, tried the formula, or even incorporated into their daily lives, their routines. Consumer feedback is what happens after that. So what product management needs to do is not focus on attention, it's focus on customer satisfaction. And to do that, to understand customer satisfaction, you need to listen to consumer feedback after repeated use, after real world use, and most importantly, without the noise of social interactions. Which brings me to the first question that one of you asked, which is, how do I track public appetite to design my product or service? So, as I said before, traditional social listening tools tell you how many people talk about your brand, for example. But to design a successful product, and this is especially true when entering a new category, for example, you need to understand the deeper public appetite and listen to your feedback. To do this effectively, I think you must analyze three critical pillars. First of all, the landscape. So, especially if you're entering a new category, but even if you are within it, you need to identify the dominant and emerging players, mapping their current market share, and understand, for example, that that sector, for example, hair care, is in that sector, two brands are dominant, they cover a specific percentage of the market, they have a specific amount of products. Then you need to understand sentiment, your sentiment, but also competitor sentiment. So what consumers actually think about the existing products in that category. Then third pillar, you need to understand the context and the unmet needs, which means understanding the real world environments where people use the products. And critically, also the problems that are still left unsolved. For example, in the hair care space, people are not finding products for dry, damaged hair. And this is a white space. Each digital platform captures a unique stage of this product discovery pipeline. But treating these channels in isolated silos will only lead you to disjointed strategies. You cannot really build a 360 degrees sales strategy if you're not making the marketplace talk to community forums or social media, for example. So at WonderFlow, that's why we aggregate all the different data sources into a single unified data engine. And we can map the right data source to each of the strategic pillars I mentioned. For example, the marketplace, which is a feature we enable, allows you for landscape analysis. It allows you to track market leaders, benchmark competitor assortments, identify product features that are dominating. Then specific data sources like rating and reviews, so on e-commerce channels, and even YouTube videos are extremely interesting for competitor analysis. There you can conduct deep dives into specific product lines or price tiers. You can extract detailed features critiques. You can benchmark on performances and understand the value proposition to see where you or your competitors are failing or shining. Then there are the Reddit or niche forums, and this is extremely interesting for context and unmet needs. You can mine unbiased community discussions for raw pain points. You can understand the workarounds that people are using to solve specific issues. And this reveals the emerging topics and the specific consumer context that maybe the current product is ignoring. For example, the dry hair care problem I mentioned before. And then there are other platforms like TikTok or Instagrams that maybe are more interesting for viral trends. You can pull aesthetic preferences from there, unboxing reactions, design reactions, and viral trends that shape your visual marketing, packaging, and go-to-market messaging. So through all these data sources, without the ability to analyze feedback at the attribute level, you wouldn't be able to get consistent insights. What do we mean by attribute level? It means that through all the data sources that we are able to aggregate, WonderFlow breaks down consumer language, consumer sentiment into granular and actionable dimensions of product performance. So it will not only tell you it's going well, it's going bad, but it will really tell you which specific feature, component, aspect is going well. So without this level of precision, brands would end up optimizing for broad signals while the real story stays hidden in this data. But let's get more into the matter with the following questions that make me really understand that the problems, the issues that there are with social media data are really visible to all of you that are attending. For example, this question, how to clear up the noise of social data and transform it into actionable insights without a full army of analysts. This is interesting. And the full army of analysts is extremely interesting. But the brutal truth is that you don't need more analysts. What you need actually is fewer data silos and a smarter way of handling these data. Because as you know, if you ask this question, social feeds are drowning in generic phrases like thanks, great post, congratulations, and irrelevant chatter, irrelevant emojis. But when humans have to manually filter this out, obviously your insights velocity drops to zero. How do we move from these, so manual filtering, manual cleaning, zero velocity, to product grounded intelligence? Basically, it all comes down to automated precision cleaning as a first step. Teaching AI to understand three main things: purpose, context, and brand and products. So our system actively identifies and ignores comments that aren't useful for a product analysis goal. Stripping out the fluff so that it doesn't skew your data. For example, the thank you. This is not relevant to our analysis. Then through context matters. So if you're analyzing user behavior in an online forum dedicated to long hair care, and a user makes a completely random passing comment about lipstick on short haircuts, the tool will flag it as an outside of category. So this is not relevant to our analysis. By running this cleaning process automatically, we can therefore drastically reduce the analytical noise and ensure that your team looks at the data that are clean and high intent. So to explain to you more what's happening, let's look at what happens inside those experiences, okay? So we know that social data doesn't behave like standard e-commerce data. When someone leaves a traditional web shop review, they have one clear goal, which is give and leave a feedback. But when people talk on Reddit, on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, etc., their posts are highly conversational and multi-layered. So if you look at the screen now, what I'm showing to you is clear that one single comment can actually contain up to, in this case, 6 completely different purposes coexisting. So traditional text analytics tools would read these entire blocks, this sentence, as one big piece of data, diluting your product insights with all this conversation and chatter. Okay, but WonderFlow's AI doesn't do that. It treats each sentence independently, mapping the exact purpose behind it. That's why we are able to isolate the actual feedback from the rest of the social noise. And by isolating the feedback, we can apply our deep sentiment and topic dictionaries strictly to the parts of the text that describe product performance and not to the chatter, the contextual information, the social interaction, and so forth. As you know, unlike rating and reviews, social conversations mix feedback, opinions, questions, habits, etc. And without this purpose extraction layer and the noise cleaning layer I explained before, insights would be unreliable. But what we want to do at WonderFlow is to take a noisy conversation on socials, because we know it's noisy, and look at it with the same exact rigorous lens as a review, for example, on Amazon. Then you might be wondering about what with the rest of the conversational text. We don't throw it, we keep it. So we keep those pre-purchase questions, we keep those tips and hopes and projections to discover emerging trends. So maybe there's no real feedback on the product in there, but there's interesting feedback for broader category analysis or emerging trends. And another interesting question is, how are the insights tied back to a specific product? So I like this question because the messy reality is that social media platforms do not give neatly structured and pre-linked product tags like a review page does. So when we look at feedback on social media, we do not have the reference that we might have on a review. Okay, so we miss that product context or SKU and ASIN context. The social platforms do not provide structured links to products. And without explicit identification, if we are never able to link what they are saying to specific products or brands or categories, they could not be tied to business decisions. So to solve this, what do we do at WonderFlow? The AI extracts the brand name, the category, and the product name from data. For example, if it sees a product called, for example, Quiet Comfort Ultra, like in this photo, on the social, it intelligently extracts the brand. And the analysis to extract products and brand uses a reference category system. This reference category system acts as a contextual lens for the AI and ensures that extraction is laser focused. This means that the AI aligns the content directly with your existing workspace categories. It's what I was saying before on the example before. If you analyze a space on headsets, like on this slide, it will skip irrelevant mentions of fast food chains. So, like in the example I put on the slide. And we go even one step further, because to help with the correct identification of information and interpretation of this information, the AI also inherits context from the environment. I'll make a simple example. If there is a YouTube video with a specific title, for example, unboxing Evolve 385, and then during the video, it keeps mentioning the word headset, but never mentioning the product name, then the AI will be able to inherit the context from the video title, and knowing that the headset they are speaking about, if not mentioned, is that specific product. Same goes, for example, for a Reddit thread. If the main subject is a specific product, it can inherit the context from the environment. This is interesting because it's at the basis of these extractions that we can do to further give information on this unstructured data. Other things that can be extracted, for example, are other mentioned brands that are not relevant to that category but could be relevant for trend detection, or discovery topics that maybe are not product related but still potentially provide themes that can be investigated. This is how, for example, in this YouTube video, we were able to identify the brands and on the brand names, even the mentioned product for that specific brand. This is something the AI can do thanks to all the category signals that it can detect. So to quickly summarize, the question was, how can you go back to the product that's mentioned on social, since social are very different from rating and reviews? WonderFlow goal is to allow to analyze all the social discussions with the same rigor. We've said that, I've said that, Katya said that. So that's what we achieve through 3 layers. First, comment relevance. Very first thing I've mentioned, we filter out irrelevant conversational noise. Second, purpose identifier. We dissect sentence level intent and analyze real feedback and not other kind of purposes. Then product, brand, and category extraction to automatically map vague mentions back to a structured workspace that makes feedback interesting and actionable for your needs. So in so doing, we turn chaotic social chatter into structured product insights. Then a bit of a different question, a bit more strategic if you want. And the question is the following. So can you screen people who are early adopters and who have a more forward-looking attitude and can influence other people's purchasing decisions? I will answer to this question from this aggregation point of view. So we do not track personal profiles individually, but we help in monitoring what customers are saying about your products. And we can monitor that by monitoring different data sources in aggregation or by isolating data from high influence environments where early adopters naturally gather. For example, specialized subreddits. We were talking about sound, subreddits about headsets and so forth, or tech forums, or YouTube videos, maybe even on the launch day or straight after launch day, where influencers speak about the product. So how can we monitor the voice of these early adopters? First of all, we can monitor rating and reviews and social media after launch with a feature that we called product tracker. So when you or a competitor launch a new product, you can immediately add it to this product tracker to monitor early adopter sentiment as it happens. So to capture the initial wave, you can set a daily refresh initially, then maybe as the market stabilizes, decrease the frequency. You can set alerts so that you get heads up the moment early adopters mention specific topics or unexpected bugs. Then when a product launches, we know that at the very beginning, it might be difficult to know where consumers are starting to talk. And this is also what this question is about. So where are they speaking? Which e-commerce platforms are reviews appearing on? And to solve this, we are expanding it. And we have an AI-powered web searching that scans the web for new occurrences. It's something under work on e-commerce sites. It hands down new product pages where reviews are starting to appear. On social media and forums, it scans for posts and comments mentioning the product. This is how you hear what early adopters are saying by monitoring with a high rate what people are saying about, for example, your new launches. Then you can also leverage a tool across all your data sources, which is the metadata. The metadata, we have many, they are AI powered, but for example, the expert user metadata is extremely interesting because it can isolate expert users which might be more likely to be early adopters too. To summarize, this is a strategic conversation. I only touched the surface of it, but it's interesting to keep the conversation going. So feel free to reach out. Then we got also some questions that are more technical, but I reply quickly to some of those. Then I suggest scheduling a demo session if you want to go more in depth. But as I've said also during the previous answers, yes, the data is fully aggregated. Maybe I'll show you the questions a bit longer. So if the data is in the same platform, is the API output is available? What's the frequency? What are the country and languages? And which socials are covered and what type? So let me reply real quick. Yes, all the data is fully aggregated into the same platform. Our goal is always to give you a 360 overview of structured and unstructured feedback. So now you can analyze Reddit posts and YouTube video transcript and comments alongside with your reviews, or if you want, your customer care tickets, your surveys, and apply the same rigor to all of these data sources, getting the same attribute level insights you were used to if you used already the dashboard with rating and reviews. This is what we call buyer-grounded intelligence. So the practice of connecting what people say before they buy to what they say after, and analyzing both at the scale and granularity required to drive decisions. Then the ways to consume data. You asked about API. Actually, there's many. You can interact with the dashboard. You can interact directly with our agents. You can connect to your tools through API or through our MCP connection that will arrive soon. Or you can build customized dashboards for your reporting needs. So everything in all these ways of interaction, the goal is to give all teams unsiloed access to data. Then there was a question on frequency. You actually have the full control, as always. You can customize the intervals and the frequency to match whatever refresh rate your team requires, usually based on your reporting needs or your internal resources. Monthly, weekly, even daily. With all data sources, you can also have the flexibility to apply the product tracker, as I explained before. Geographically was another question. We've got you covered globally, obviously, if the country does not block access to that specific social media or channel. And what type of posts? This is interesting. Our current lineup includes Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, YouTube, Reddit. Then our product team is constantly exploring new platforms. What we scrape, it's not just, what we ingest is not just the surface, because we capture both the post and the comments related to that post. And for example, for YouTube, you have both the transcript of the video, so you know what the person is speaking about in the video itself, and the comments to that video, which is extremely interesting also to notice if there are differences between what these influencers, often they are influencers, are talking about, and how actually the audience is reactive. And from what I've seen in the dashboard, often some aspects that emerged on rating and reviews emerged also in the comments of YouTube videos. So that's an interesting match. If you have questions on these aspects, at the end of the presentation, there is a QR code to ask for a demo, and we can go more into depth. And then I have left this question for the end because it points out a very nice data science challenge. So the varying signal strengths across platforms. This is a use case that lies in our roadmap as part of our agentic toolkit development over the next months. And we are actively designing the capabilities within our BI stack to weigh these different sources. There is no secret formula. We are exploring different options. So for anyone in the audience dealing with these, we'd love to collaborate and shape it together. So you reach out to us and we'll put you in contact. That was it for the questions that I have included in these presentations. If I didn't include some of your questions, feel free to reach out via email and we will schedule a session or reply directly to you. I hope some of the doubts on noise, product links on such a difficult data source were clarified, and also on the differences between product intelligence and social listening on this specific data source. And I leave the floor to Katia again.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that was great. We try to keep these office hour session to, between 30 to 45 minutes. And so they tend to be shorter than a typical maybe 1 hour webinars. So thank you so much for attending today. And if you have any more questions, there's still a couple of minutes that you can like still put them into the Q&A session or in chat. But we also wanted to share some additional resources that you can access on our website. Elisabetta, if you can go to the next slide, please. Yep. And so if you use these are some resources from our website. We have specific articles generally about social listening. We have one about the Reddit consumer analysis and one about YouTube. And those go a little bit more in depth on those specific subjects. So feel free to explore some of them. As I said, we will be sharing the recording of this session. And if you have anything else, please let us know. I think, Ellie, there is a question, I think that has come in, if you want to take a look. And actually a couple, I see that some of the questions are starting.
I'm reading them now.
Yeah. But I think in general, as Elisabetta is kind of looking at the questions right now, I'll just say that we do try to keep our blog updated. And so feel free to explore that a bit more. And we now have our new website, and then some of the past office hours are also being published there. So lots of resources for you to explore. And as Ellie said, if you need something, you have a very specific use case and you really want to talk to our data science team about a specific use case, feel free to book a demo with our team and we'd be happy to answer your questions and to kind of walk you through what the capabilities of WonderFlow are.
Yes.
But
Thank you, Katia.
I'll pass the mic back to Ellie for
So
some.
I see some questions. Thank you for
Yeah.
them. So the video transcript capability. Yes, right now the video transcript capability is available on YouTube, but the product team is exploring videos on other platforms too. So that's a very good question. As Katia said, if you keep in contact with all our resources, you will see the product updates when they arrive. As I said before, on YouTube, there's not only the transcript, but actually also the comments related to that, which adds even more value. Then another question is on what data is included by default. Does that depend on company product setting? Could we just track specific keyword on all platform? Basically, there is, as always, your business needs defines what you decide to track. So if you need to track some specific pages, if we're talking about social platforms, you can track a whole page, for example, a whole Instagram page or a whole subreddit on Reddit. If you need to track some specific keywords, you can find the keywords that are most relevant to your needs and track those keywords on some platforms or some keywords on, for example, a specific subreddit. I'm taking an example. So flexibility is based on your needs and the business outcomes that you want to achieve. Then I've mentioned Reddit as a forum. Obviously, we know there's different forums that might be relevant for different verticals and industries. We've explored some in the past. So in this case, you can reach out to me, tell me exactly which you were referring to, and I will give you a specific answer on that. And as for how much back data is the tool able to give? Also, in this case, everything depends on the business outcome. We are able to go back in time to provide historical context for the platforms that you want to monitor. So it wouldn't only be limited to day one. I don't know if there's another question in or not. No,
I think there is one more that's like kind of a second part. Can one also get data from different?
yes, I've answered that.
Oh, okay. I think
We
that.
explore depending on the specific forum. So reach out to me, and I will be happy to explore this together.
Yeah. And it's just to kind of the Elisabetta's emails, elisabetta@wonderflow.ai if you want to reach out to her directly. There's some
Exactly.
additional questions. Well, I think we are at time, and I don't see any more questions coming in, but hopefully this was helpful and educational to the audience. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.